Welcome back, everyone. We have some news, and this carries forward on the many other things that we've been talking about. Canada's new tech talent strategy. This is all about U.S. H1B visa holders and some of the options that are going to be available for you in a world where layoffs are happening in the U.S. and Canada is now opening its doors. So if we start off right from the beginning, it has been a frenzy the last 2 days for us here in Canada, hasn't it, Alicia?
It's been really busy with lots of announcements, and this is the one that we really want to highlight because it's brand new, it's a totally new program, and it's very specific in who it's targeting.
Indeed. And so you've probably seen some messaging about this, but Canada has announced its new tech talent strategy. And where was it released? Well, our Minister of Immigration, Sean Fraser, this fine fellow right here, appeared at the Collision Conference on June 27th, just a few days ago, and presented this new program. Now, he talked about a number of different things that we're not going to spend a lot of time on in this actual episode here, but he did mention a renewed emphasis, I guess, on digital nomads. They're looking at new innovative streams to encourage tech workers to come to Canada through more expedited work permit options for employers. That'll be coming later in 2023. But what the big news is right now, it's all about what I call the Canada H1B visa holder work permit. So, Alicia, can you just jump in a little bit and just tell the listeners what this Canada H1B work permit looks like?
Yeah, and we don't have all the details yet, but the reason that we want to get ahead of the game is because this is all going to open in just a little bit over 2 weeks. So July 16th, it is a Sunday. July 16th, 2023, this program is going live. And Mark and I, from our experience dealing with the TR to PR situation that was happening in 2021, it was a race. And so they have only launched 10,000 spots. So this is capped. 10,000 people are going to be able to make this application. They said they're going to keep it open for a year, but based on our experience and what's happened before, it's probably going to be gone within a day. So if you
Absolutely.
are looking at this application, make sure that you are ready ahead of time. And that's why we really want to go through what are we talking about, who's going to qualify, who's going to be eligible for it, and what do you need to do now?
And one of the things I want to point out, Alicia mentioned this TR to PR pathway. So basically, just to give you a little bit of background on that one, because we see the same thing happening with this H1B visa holder. We've got right around 400,000 US H1B visa holders today, give or take. We're not US immigration attorneys, so you try to find statistics on this and it's hard to find it, but there's over 400,000. So 10,000 spots, yes. Those are, that is capped, or if, like the government has said, they'll leave it open for 1 year. There's no way it's going to stay open for that long, especially with the layoffs in the US. And people say too, Alicia, well, what about layoffs in Canada? Well, Canada's playing the long-term game here, and they are looking at inviting people to come in, check out Canada. And these are open work permits, right? These are permits that don't even mean you have to work in tech. And they are for specialty occupations. And we think it's high tech specifically, not just all H1B visa holders. So we'll have more information as we continue forward. But do you want to mention a little bit about that, Alicia?
Yeah, keep in mind, so they've told us so far that it'll be holders of H-1B specialty occupation visas in the US is what they said in the backgrounder. So let's unpack that a little bit. It's not just any H-1B specialty occupations or any H-1Bs, it's H-1B specialty occupations. So that's the first aspect. And then the next aspect is in the backgrounder, it does say people in the US. So for sure, there's going to be people overseas who might have been approved their H-1B specialty occupation visa. We're not sure yet if it'll apply to anybody outside of the US, but probably it's going to be inside the US and it's got to be the H-1B specialty occupation visa. So specialty occupation visa, keep in mind that, again, we're not US immigration attorneys, but in general, that requires a bachelor's degree in that specialty occupation.
And that's something we will get to here a little bit later. what you need to do to start preparing now. So 2 weeks is not a lot of time. Now, one of the fortunate things, I guess, for individuals that are already in the U.S., a lot of the things that you needed in order to get your U.S. H1B visa in the first place, you're going to need for Canada. So if you've been on these visas for a long time and you keep getting them re-upped, but you don't see a pathway to green card status in the U.S., you need to refresh your documents, make sure that they're all current. And we'll get into that in just a second. But the reality is this will be a feeding frenzy. And just to clarify, this TR to PR pathway that I started explaining back in, I think it was May 6th, 2021, they opened it up for 40,000 international graduates to apply. It filled up so quickly that their counting system didn't catch people submitting at the exact same time. So they actually admitted 48,000. And that's that type of a situation. They said, yeah, we'll keep it open for the year or until it fills up. Well, it filled up in like 48,000 in half a day. And so as part of that process, our firm, we created courses to help people do it themselves. I'll get into that in a little bit, but this is the world that we're likely going to see. If you want to come to Canada in the future, well, this is the way that you do it. And if you can get in and you fit the requirements and you can get this work permit, it doesn't even mean that you need to use it necessarily. And I think a lot of people are going to apply and have it kind of as a provisional backup because, depending on what's going to happen with their U.S. visas. And the reality is, if many people have been laid off in the U.S. on an employer-specific visa, this is your out. And this is why the minister, this fine fellow right here, did the announcement in the way he did. The Collision Conference was, those who are not familiar with it, I'm sure most are, is kind of one of the most recognized global conferences on tech that are out there. And it just happened to be in Toronto and just happened to have the minister going on stage like he was some kind of, Bill Gates or some tech mogul. But anyways, he came and he announced this program, and Canada is serious about not only having you come as an open work permit holder and come and check out Canada, but they're hoping you will come and you will stay permanently. Now, we're not going to get into the pros and cons of whether Canada is a good place to be working as a tech person or whether there's more opportunities in the US. The reality is we are speaking to all of you out there who've lost your freaking jobs in the US and you don't have options. And now you're wondering, what the heck am I going to do for myself and my family? I've invested so much into this country, my education, my work, and now what? And so Canada is saying, well, give us a shot, but only the first 10,000 of you. And it doesn't mean you're accompanying family members. It's just you. So how do you qualify? So
Yeah.
yeah,
And Mark,
go
so
ahead.
just to clarify that, the limit of 10,000 applications only pertains to the principal applicant,
Principal
but you are
applicant.
allowed to bring your spouse and kids. And we'll talk about the mechanics of that and maybe some pros and cons to consider when you're
Yeah.
putting together your application. But $10,000 applicants plus their family members is going to be allowed through this. Keep in mind that they have said this is an open work permit for 3 years. That means that you don't have to work for any specific Canadian employer.
Mhm.
And that's huge for people who want to have mobility when they come to Canada with their work permit.
Yeah.
So what do you need to do now? What do you need to prove in order to qualify? So we talked about current H1B specialty occupation visa status, supposedly in the US. So you've got to have proof of that. Make sure that you've got your passport. Make sure that your passport is valid. So because this work permit is potentially open to you for 3 years, hopefully, you're probably not going to have time to go renew your passport right now, but hopefully your passport is going to be valid for at least 3 years. If it is, then you'll be able to benefit from the full 3-year term. If your passport is not going to be valid for the next full 3 years, you might only get however long your passport is valid for your work permit to be authorized, right? They're never going to give you a work permit usually that's valid for longer than your passport. So keep
And
in
it and
mind.
it's yeah, and it's interesting, Alicia, too. So in Canada, you pay a boatload of money, you go up in person, and if there's a real emergency, sometimes you can get your passport in like a week or less. So if you come from a country, you see that your passport's only going to be valid for a year and a half more, you may want to consider, if you have time before the everything opens on July the 16th, which, like Alicia said, is a Sunday, there may still be time to extend it. And the reason we say that is because in some prior applications in Canada, the government does not want to be bothered with people asking to extend these things. So if your passport expires, in 2 years, they may only give you a 2-year work permit. So keep
Mhm.
that in mind. They might allow you to extend it, but usually they like to just get it one and done. But we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah, so passport validity is huge. If you are going to be applying with your spouse or kids, then make sure their passports are also going to be valid. So that's another thing to consider. So passports, proving your H1B specialty occupation status in the US, you probably are going to have to provide proof of your degree as well, because that's one of the things that you're normally required to do for the H1B status. So just in case, make sure you have a full copy of your original degree or certificate, as well as your transcripts. Make sure that if it's in a foreign language, that you have a certified copy. So you have the original version in color, good quality scan, plus a certified translation of that degree, plus the transcripts. That's probably going to be your safest bet in terms of proving it. The other thing is we want to make sure that anybody who is going to be looking at applying for this new Canada H1B work permit is not inadmissible. So making sure that you don't have any potential criminal charges or convictions, arrests, things like that that could make you inadmissible to Canada, or potential medical inadmissibility. So be careful about that kind of thing, because it could result in you not being approved that work permit, but hopefully you will be admissible to Canada.
And one thing I will point out on that front, Alicia, is the fact that, sometimes in some states, DUIs are not considered to be terribly serious, not something that would jeopardize. And that's why we bring it up. Most people are thinking, hey, I'm on an H1B. I wouldn't be here in the US if I had criminality. They'd be kicking me out a long time ago. But the reality is some offenses are minor or relatively minor or treated as such in the US that are not treated that way in Canada. And a driving under the influence, or, driving while, impaired,
Intoxicated.
those types of convictions can make you inadmissible to Canada, and they can derail everything for you.
hmm So be aware of that stuff. And if you have questions about it, if you're not sure, then for sure, talk to an immigration lawyer, book a consultation, make sure that you get that stuff vetted. In terms of mechanics, how are you going to apply? Well, this is the black box, right? They haven't told us what's going to happen or what the mechanics are in terms of the application mechanism. But we have been watching what immigration has been doing over the years with various permanent residence applications, as well as other temporary residence applications like work permits. So we have some ideas, we have some suspicions in
Yeah, we've
terms
got a
of
pretty good idea of what's going to happen. It's just a
what
matter
you'll
of
need to
where
do.
where they put the button for us to click, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So these are things that you'll want to start doing now so that you're ready when things go live on July 16th. So make sure that you have gathered some things. We talked about having a color copy scan of your passport, all the stamped pages, plus the visas that are in it, plus a copy of your H1B specialty occupation visa itself. Make sure you've got your degree diplomas and transcripts and translations if they are in a foreign language. Make sure that you've got your family members' proof of status. So if you're married, you want your marriage certificate. If it's in a foreign language, again, you want a certified translation. If you have birth certificates for kids that are in foreign languages, certified translations plus the originals for those as well. So your documents plus family member documents are going to need to be in order.
And one thing I want to reiterate, the people that are going to get through are the ones that will have everything ready to go. And one of the things that we're doing within our firm, the same thing we did with the tier to peer pathway, is, if you have counsel that represents the company, and maybe your company you're working for has another operation in Canada, whatever it might be, if there's someone else that's there to assist you with this, that's great. But please understand that this is a race to file. So if you've got one attorney, one immigration, representative that's going to be doing these work permits for 10, you and 9 other employees, well, where are you going to rank? And by the time they get one submitted, it may be done. So please be careful. And so what we do as a firm, yes, we take one person each. That's it. We won't take any others because we don't want to take the chance that it fills up before we get to that second person and they lose out on their opportunity. And because it's going to be a mad frenzy, and because you guys are all tech savvy, we are going to create a course and we're going to do a series of master classes leading up to July 16th. And in the description here in the video and in the show notes of the podcast, some of you may be watching this on our YouTube channel, the Canadian Immigration Institute. In the description, there'll be a link where you can actually connect in and leave your email to get notified once we've got that course ready. And we're already starting to build it. And this helped over the same method helped over 500, I think, people go through the TR to PR pathway. Now they're all PRs. So we're going to replicate it and do it for H1B visa holders in the US who are interested in this. And if you are prepared, if you have your documents ready, the first people to get it in and done right are the ones that are going to get those spots. And the ones that are still figuring out, okay, which form do I need? Oh, I need this information. You're going to lose out. So let's touch on that, Alicia. So as far as the specific things, you've talked about it, but let's look at just briefly, in the last couple of minutes we have, the forms. What kind of things, what kind of information do people need to start collecting now, even though they don't know exactly whether it's going to be an online form or a PDF form? What are those things?
hmm Make sure that you know your work history, right? So have the last 10 years of your work history. Make sure that you know exactly your start dates and your end dates. Make sure you know what your job titles were, because it's important to get it right, especially if you're looking for express entry applications down the road. Make sure that you have your travel history. So go through and start looking at all of your records to figure that out now. Usually they want exact dates for every single day you entered and left. So know what your travel history is, know what your address history is. These are all important things. Gather it for the last 10 years and make sure that you also pull together an updated copy of your resume or your CV. And that's just going to help you get organized.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we talked about before, although you go to the Canadian work permit instructions and checklists, it doesn't say necessarily that you need a bachelor's degree, but we highly, highly recommend, like Alicia said, that you have that ready. Bachelor's, whatever your degree is, your, master's, your transcripts, and then also we've suggested maybe get your FBI, your police clearance certificate, have that ready. It's also not something that's specifically required, but it's pretty easy to get when you're in the US. So go ahead and do that and make sure obviously you've got all your status documents all ready to go, and then you're going to be in a great situation. All right. I don't know. Other than that, please understand family. We're running out of time here. Things are going quickly, but if you got family, then you're going to need all those supporting documents, for them. And we haven't yet decided on what our opinion is on that. It takes a lot longer to include everything for a family member than an individual applicant. And maybe some people consider filing, on their own. They're still disclosing their family, but only applying for a work permit for themselves. Maybe it's faster, maybe not, but we will have more information. So please subscribe to the channel. And if you're, if you've got this, you've got friends that are interested too, share this with them. Any other final comments, Alicia, as we wrap things up here?
My final thought is make sure to get your photos as well. So go take a look at the photo specifications and get some photos for you and for any family member you're including.
You bet. So you can track more information on the Canadian Immigration Institute YouTube channel, listen on the podcast, the Canadian Immigration Podcast. And if you want to book a consult and just get some direct help, wholefleetlaw.com. More information will be available in the description as well as the trailer here. All right. Thanks, Alicia. And thanks, everybody. There will be lots more coming.